Oh, howdy all, grab yourself a drink, it is time for some PathOfExile discussion. Welcome to Day 8 of Spoiler Season for Patch 3.20 and the Forbidden Sanctum League. I've put up a video on a number of possible league starters, which I'll put a link to down in the description of this below. Of course, that's not an exhaustive list of everything that can be good. News-wise though, today we have one new divination card to report on, and this is the Wedding Gift, a divination card for Arakaali's Fang. Arakaali's Fang is a build-empowering unique item that is very, very rare. It's tier 1 rarity, and so it's something that you will probably not find in most leagues through casual play or even fairly determined play. It does drop across the entire economy, there's plenty of them, and there's often more of them in circulation by the end of week 3 than there are people that want it. But for that first couple of weeks, it can be a very, very scarce item. This is likely to be a very, very rare divination card. If it is a tile set drop, I'm expecting that this will be between 2 and 2.5 times as common as the Doctor, and that is based on comparing it to other divination cards that also award tier 1 drop anywhere uniques. Of course, it could be something that drops only from the Arakaali map boss, or it could be something else entirely different. That's getting into the realm of speculation. There is a very strong thematic link to Arakaali, the boss of the Sunken City map. Something that's going to be really important though is that if you are playing in Trade League, Arakaali's Fang is going to get much cheaper earlier on as a result of this. A lot of people will pull this card out of stack decks early, and that's going to mean there's a lot more of them in circulation. They're going to look at it and immediately know, yeah, this is a top 1 to 2% divination card, and they're going to go and sell it. These people will start trying to undercut each other, and as a result, Arakaali's Fang should be much more accessible in trade-enabled softcore in particular than it usually is. Secondly, there was some footage that was provided of Vaal Venom Gyre and Vaal Flurry. Now, this footage was provided on a character that had very low attack speed for Vaal Flurry, and the skill looks actually fairly interesting. It causes a rapidly expanding circle to appear around your character. I think this is similar to casting Flame Blast targeting yourself. You channel this up, and then when you release it, it fires off a Blade Flurry type attack at every monster near you. However, the thing that's really interesting is that this circle blinds monsters that are inside it while you're in the process of charging it. Whilst blind is not the extreme powerhouse that it used to be back in the 3.15 and earlier era of the game, it is still fairly solid if it's on a character that has a fair amount of evasion rating. This makes me think that Vaal Flurry and the Champion Ascendancy are a good match, because the Champion Ascendancy can get great value out of Grace, Determination, Defiance Banner, that whole package to provide it with a lot of defenses. Determination helps you shake off the smaller hits and provides you with Molten Shell as a powerful defensive layer, and Grace is there making it harder for enemies to hit you, and even if they are on the more accurate end, Blind is going to be nerfing their accuracy, which again makes your evasion rating even better. Vaal Venom Gyre was particularly interesting. It looks like it does 3 things for you. The first thing Vaal Venom Gyre looks to do is raise your Venom Gyre blades cap to 50. The second thing is grant you regeneration of these blades, and it looks like it may actually be 20 per second. That's based upon me having a look at it frame by frame. I'm not absolutely certain that's the case, but hopefully we'll get some hard information on that tomorrow or soon after when the 2020 gem information is revealed. And the third thing that it does is it instantly replenishes all of your Venom Gyre blades when you use it as well. And that's to your new cap of 50, not to your standard cap of 30. And I think it's going to be one of those Vaal skills that you will definitely use on a build that is already running Venom Gyre. Finally, GGG put out a recently asked questions FAQ, and this has got some useful information in it. When will the passive skill tree be updated? We've updated the passive skill tree data on GitHub to make it available to tool creators. The passive skill tree on the PathOfExile website gets updated alongside the expansion launch. So this means Path of Building very, very soon, if not already. With the changes to jewels, will the Unexpected Prize divination card be updated? So this is the divination card that grants you an attribute transforming jewel. The answer is yes, it will now offer a corrupted attribute transforming jewel. Will you bring back the strike mastery that was removed? So this is the strike mastery that causes strikes that hit multiple targets to be able to reach an extra 30%. We discussed this further based on player feedback to see if we could consider other options, but unfortunately it won't be back in 3.20. That's one that people are pretty sad to see lost. I still think that the changes to melee overall are a net buff, but this is definitely one thing that is not a buff. There is a discrepancy in the patch notes around the Lord of Drought cluster jewels notable. Which version is correct? The specifics version is correct, and we'll update the solutions section to reflect this. Do Sanctum rewards only come from offers? No, the monsters also drop rewards, and many of them are unique monsters with corresponding levels of item rarity and quantity. Also in the endgame, you can get new unique items and sanctified relics from the Sanctum. Do ruthless characters migrate to permanent parent leagues at the end of a challenge league? Yes, they do. When will Calandra League end? in about 34 hours from the time that I am editing and uploading this video. So it is 10 AM New Zealand Daylight Savings Time on the 7th of December. Does Vaal Smite's buff increase single target damage? Yes, it does. Vaal Smite has more damage than regular Smite, and its aura has a longer duration that has higher added lightning damage, and it also generates lightning bolts that strike another target. Now, my understanding here is that Vaal Smite's aura is going to therefore overwrite the regular Smite aura. It is possible that both the Smite aura and the Vaal Smite aura will apply, but I don't see any evidence for that. I think it will just be that the Vaal Smite one will be better, and therefore it will be the one that applies. Can Vaal Molten Strike's projectiles overlap? Yes, multiple projectiles can hit the same target. How does Vaal Volcanic Fissure work against single targets? Basically, the fissures, which are the part that sort of looks like an abyss moving, monsters can only be targeted once per activation of Vaal Volcanic Fissure by one of those things. So if you're fighting a single boss, it would be only affected by one fissure, then it would travel to random locations. So it would just pick a random spot on the ground, may or may not be of any use to you from then onwards. If you have two bosses, the first fissure would affect one, the second fissure would affect the other. This is going to be much better in fights where there's a lot of trash monsters. How do Vaal Caustic Arrow's ground effects stack with regular Caustic Arrow? An enemy can only be affected by one Caustic ground effect. If multiple are applied, the strongest effect will be the one that applies to the enemy, and that will be Vaal Caustic Arrow in most scenarios because it is simply better. Have Delirium Everywhere event prizes been sent out? Yes. When will a new core supporter packs come out? After the league launches and before Christmas. Date is not yet ready to be announced. At that point, the existing core supporter packs, so this is the Incinerator series, they will go away. Will there be any changes to Ruthless for the 3.20 launch? Yes, there is PathOfExile.com/Ruthless. This has had a few updates on it already. One of the things that I noticed that was a significant change that's been made that wasn't in the alpha is that 4-socket, 5-socket, and 6-socket items will start appearing at different levels to where they do in the regular game. Many people thought that would be a significant nerf to progression through the storyline. I don't think it really will be, because most of the time when you're running through the storyline in Ruthless, you do not have access to a full 4-link because you just don't have the support gems yet. If you are having a quite lucky run where you get relevant support gems early, in this situation, this may reduce how significant a boost you get from that. Can we have a way to accumulate Sanctum rooms and attempt them back to back? Yes, you can accumulate up to 8 rooms, the size of a full Sanctum floor, before running some or all of them at once. Now, reading between the lines here, this implies to me that the Sanctum is not going to have map mods, because I don't think it's going to remember the map mods from 8 different zones. That's going to be something that'll be a big change between Sanctum and Incursion, which is probably the most similar league thematically that we've had in the past. But we'll play around with that and see exactly how it feels. I get a strong vibe at the moment from everything we know about the Sanctum that once you get a really strong reward, the objectively correct play, if you like, is going to be to drop back to tier 1 maps and to finish the rest of the Sanctum in tier 1 maps. I hope that's not the case. I don't think that's going to be particularly fun, but we'll see exactly how it plays out. How hard are the Sanctum mechanics for melee builds? Your resolve is impacted less by attacks that you are close to, so melee characters can have an easier time. This is a really big thing. I think this will also have a big impact on builds that are not melee as well. Builds, for example, like Seismic Trap Poison, that should be very strong against bosses in this league, may actually be in a position where their best strategy is going to be very close to bosses within the Sanctum anyway. Even though that doesn't really gel with the Trapper playstyle, normally you would be playing at long range, you may not need to do that in the context of the Sanctum. What happens if I crash while in the Forbidden Sanctum? When you play your next map, you'll get another chance to replay the room you were up to. Aureus coins and rewards are locked in only upon successful completion of a room. Do Sanctified Relics affect my character outside the Sanctum? Yes, they affect you everywhere. Do note that Chris Wilson did say in the live stream that these are not going to remain with your character when the league ends, so they are going to be something that is not going to go legacy. How rare are Sanctified Relics? Will I only see one throughout my playthrough of the league? As you start to master the Sanctum at high level, you will accumulate more Sanctified Relics to pick between when trying to find the perfect one for your build. So I'm getting the sense here that these will be maybe comparable in rarity to unique items in the core game, or a little bit rarer than that, something that you'll probably have quite a lot of as you progress through the game. One thing I have noticed, I think that all the Sanctified Relics we've seen so far have been minimum level 60. GGG sometimes use 100% of the level requirement of an item as the minimum level that something can drop, and also sometimes they use 80%. So I'm going to speculate that these will either start dropping at level 60 or level 75, but we'll find out more information on that later. Is the Relic Altar shared between your characters or per character? Your Relic Altar is per character, but your Relic Locker is shared between your characters in the same league. Is your Sanctum run shared between characters? Can you run different rooms of your run with different characters? Each character has its own Sanctum runs and progress within them. Why haven't you nerfed Seismic Trap? Okay, so the first time I recorded this video, I did a 3.5 minute rant at this point about how bad a decision GGG have made by not nerfing Seismic Trap this league. Seismic Trap is in a position where it was nerfed pretty hard between 3.18 and 3.19, and it's to the point that most casual players aren't interested in playing the skill. The only people who are playing this skill are the people who want to get to bosses really, really, really fast, i.e. the top 1 or 2% of the player base. And those players are going to use the most powerful skill whether they like it or not, whether they find it fun or not. Seismic Trap is going to be very heavily used amongst the most experienced section of the player base. Many of these players are already sick of the skill, but even if you're not someone that is in that category, you're not one of those top couple percent of players, the fact that the top 1 or 2% of players will have such a broken skill that they can use means that by the time that you get up to killing bosses like the Maven or Uber Elder, that most of the opportunities to profit from these bosses will have already dried up. That's because you are going to be competing with those veteran players to purchase the entry fees into these zones. You'll be competing for Fragments of Knowledge, Fragments of Shape, you'll be competing for Maven's Writs, and that's the nature of a trade league. Anytime that you buff the ability of the top 1% of players to kill bosses, you end up nerfing the profitability of them for everyone else. You make the boss more expensive to access, and you nerf its loot simultaneously. That's the consequence of GGG not nerfing Seismic Trap. It's not too late to change your mind. Now, some people are probably thinking at this point, now that's only for Trade League, that doesn't apply to SSF, but SSF is a harder version of the game. You balance for the core game, that may have some implications on some of the hard modes, whether that be hardcore, whether it be ruthless, whether it be solo self-found, but the balance needs to be around the most popular rule set, which is still softcore, trade-enabled, non-ruthless. When you reroll an Awakened Gem from one type to another with the new Beast crafting recipe, will it keep its experience level? Basically, the answer here is that it will pretty much be the same. It might be slight little tweaks here and there. I think that the way the Awakened Gems work is that depending on the minimum level of the non-Awakened version of the gem, they have a slightly different experience threshold, but it's pretty similar. It's pretty close to 400 million for every level, but there's a couple of percent either side. Essentially, if you put 1 billion XP on it as one gem and then you transform it into another one, it'll still have about 1 billion XP on it. The next question deals with curse masteries that recover life or recover mana when you curse a non-cursed enemy. How do these interact with blasphemed curses? And the answer is that they don't. So you'll not be able to gain mana and life by running in and out of a radius around a monster. The Tribal Fury notable passive skill no longer has strike skills target one additional nearby enemy. It now has melee strike skills deal splash damage to surrounding targets. Does that apply to the melee of dominating blow minions? No, it does not. With Survival Secrets Duel now removed, will its effects, flasks applied to you have 20% reduced effect, and or flasks gain 3 charges every 3 seconds while inactive, be available anywhere else in game? No, with the potential that this will be looked at in the longer term. This is bad news for people who are wanting to play Ward Loop, because although flasks applied to you have 20% reduced effect is a serious nerf to character power, it is actually the exact thing that Ward Loop needs, because reducing the numbers on Oroth's Resolve actually makes that flask better. So this means that Ward Loop is going to be in a considerably worse place than in previous leagues. Do you have any plans to restore the effects of Replica Conqueror's Efficiency, Replica Hot-Headed, and Lord of Steel? No, we don't see these effects as necessary to retain, and really, I cannot see myself agreeing with this at all. Lord of Steel is really important for Impale builds, Replica Hot-Headed is an interesting and powerful jewel, and Replica Conqueror's Efficiency is just a general powerhouse item that really would have been fine if they just made it a fairly rare unique and put it into the core drop pool, or alternately if they had renamed it as Replica Lionized Fall. Really want that item back because Replica Conqueror's Efficiency in particular is just something that solves a bunch of problems on a lot of builds. It's a very strong item without ever being broken. Can we have color-coded monster mods back? We're looking into it and are keen for your suggestions, feedback on the readability of monster mods. Can you confirm how many modifiers rare monsters will have? Balancing around having between 2 and 4 per rare monster. One thing I do think they should fix is make it so that they can only have one very early in the game. Don't know how long this needs to be, probably just for Act 1, but then from Act 2 onwards maybe have them be 1 and 2, but Act 1 they should probably be capped at 1. What's up with challenges and Ruthless? Basically, GGG didn't have the development time or didn't invest the development time in Ruthless that would have been necessary to make challenges work there. What's happened to Atziri's Disfavor's drop location? It is being moved back to Uber Atziri, and Pledge of Hands has been moved from Uber Atziri to regular Atziri. So those two items are doing a switcheroo. Pledge of Hands will be much more available than it's been in the past, and Atziri's Disfavor will be back to being pretty rare again, but it has been buffed pretty hard as well. How does gain additional elemental damage reduction equal to half your chaos resistance from the Eternal Damnation amulet interact with elemental damage over time? It interacts in the most favourable way for the player using Eternal Damnation, i.e. yes, it does mitigate that damage. Does using a fracturing mod also re-roll the mods on an item? No, it does not. Fracturing orbs just work like the Harvest Craft that was removed that used to fracture 4. If the way socketing and linking of items is going to change in Path of Exile 2, what's going to happen to the Ethereal Fusing effect, which is one of the things that comes in one of the new MTX packs? It's too early to make promises for exactly how Path of Exile 2 works, but our goal here is to make microtransactions be updated to be as compatible as possible. So I'm assuming that it will basically be something that's almost identical, but will be for gems instead. Will it be a boss kill event at launch? Not this time. And when will we see 2020 gems? GGG are aiming for as early as Tuesday New Zealand time, but it may be as late as Thursday. We'll keep you updated as things become finalised. And I'll bet here that the thing holding them up is that 1 or 2 of the new gems are probably overperforming in the alpha. This is not the Ruthless alpha that I was involved in. This is the non-disclosure agreement covered alpha where people are testing all of the new mechanics. And there's probably 1 or 2 of them that they're just trying to push. What's the right spot for them to be at? Should they be better? Should they be worse? GGG will work that out. They'll probably get most of them right. They'll probably get 2 or 3 of them too weak and 1 of them too strong. And we'll find all that out over time. Anyways, that's all we got for today. May your Vaal Orbs have interesting results, and I will see you around.